I am going to actually try to screencast this as well, just so I have a record of how crappy it was.
You're in the dark now, though. In the light. Spotlight.
Does that mean we're not allowed to ask stupid questions?
Definitely. That's the only kind I know how to answer anyway. So for anybody that hasn't heard it, seen of it, all that stuff, for about a year and a half now, I've been developing my own theme. I started actually at Design for Drupal, the first one they had last year, and had some people talking to me about what was a good theme to start with, all this stuff, and basically my opinion was that they all sucked. And I hated working with any of them. No matter what I did, I had issues with Zen, I had issues with taking a Garland theme and just stripping it down and starting from there. So I wanted to start building my own platform to build all my sites off of. And Omega is 960 grid system base theme. For anybody that doesn't know, the quick story, 960 Grid is a CSS framework that gives you essentially a bunch of columns on your page, and it takes the effort out of the needing to position your sidebars and all of this junk when you're trying to theme out your Photoshop designs. That's always the problem with why doesn't it work in IE all of a sudden, your sidebars down in the footer somewhere. The grid system actually just gives you very strict measurements for each of these grids, and you can start laying things in, and as long as you stick to these classes that it provides, it gives you an easy way to put out all of this without the frustration. And then you can just worry about the design, the actual making it pretty, and not worry about the layout. So there have been 2 versions so far. I started in Drupal 6. There's a working version of that, which is now not my favorite thing on the planet, and I choose not to keep it updated very well. I started probably 3 months ago working on the Drupal 7 version. That was kind of just a quick upgrade to get all the features ported to Drupal 7 and ready to go. I added in an extra theme into the package that has some visual effects to it, actually a little prettier than just the white screen and text that you get with a normal base theme. But I've recently, about 2 weeks ago, started on the 2.0 version, which will, in my opinion, revolutionize Drupal theming and potentially have a chance to maybe end up in the Drupal package at some point. So, to do all this, the Omega theme by itself, this new 2.0 version is working. And I'll have a short demo of that after this. I've also been talking for about a year and a half about the Delta module. Delta module is something I conceived, and I'll touch on it a couple times here throughout. A helper module that's going to essentially take in themes like mine, and it's hard to sometimes talk about some of this before I get to actually a demo, because the settings that are involved in configuring your layout and a million potential regions can start to be quite complex. But what I actually wanted is to be able to define for a homepage, for a blog page, for a different complete section of the site. I wanted to do everything differently with my regions. And there are tools to already do that with placing your blocks, like the context module will let you put your blocks where you want in whatever context it may be. I wanted kind of the same thing for my theme, so that in the blog section I could get rid of both the sidebars, or put them both on one side, where the rest of the site, they're split sidebars. That's what the Delta module will be. And now, for this new version of Omega, I have it committed, but there's nothing in there but a reading file. The Omega UI, pronounced UI, is going to be the visual interface that also through several of my presentations at camps and DrupalCons I've talked about the feature plans, and it was going to be in all of these settings that you'll see, the ability to, by a very slick interface that anybody could look at, never having touched Drupal, and understand how to resize a sidebar, how to move a region to some other area, how to make one now full width and move it to the bottom of the page. So essentially that's going to be the user interface that lays on top of Omega and will then power everything in a slick interface. So simply as it can be said, Omega will be the future of theming in Drupal. And the two modules I just mentioned, the Omega UE and Delta, will be recommended to get the most out of what Omega will be capable of. And currently, there are, check out the Omega version, I'll get to this again. I just released an alpha of this 2.0 version today that does work. And I actually think probably in the next week, I'll be starting it on a live site for a client and getting paid to make some of the final bug fixes. So there are releases of all three of these modules, and as it continues to move forward, they will be getting better, and I think the Delta will be first in completion, and then followed by the UE.
What's the difference between Delta and the UE?
I finally decided to break it up because Delta was always going to be there. You heard these talks and the contextual theme settings and all this. The original plan with that is that's going to work with any theme. That Delta will work with Fusion, it'll work with Garland, it'll let you change your logo on different sections of your site if you want to. So Delta needs to be theme independent and just work really well with Omega. For a while, after I started the new version of Omega, I started thinking Delta would still take care of that, and then also do this cool interface that I can't do on the theme layer. It's got to go in a module. But through some conversations and arguments, I was told that it needed to be something with Omega in the name for this overlay interface, and that will only work with Omega. There's nothing else that even works remotely the same. So that's why the separation there. The UE will be just for the cool interface, and Delta will be kind of for some functional enhancements.
Jake, was there an alpha at some point?
Alpha what?
Did you have an alpha? Or was it somebody else's?
Of the
Oh,
alpha.
module names.
No,
Alpha
theme.
module names.
Give it a
specifically.
It's available for Drupal 6.
Okay.
It was actually, before the current version of my blog, it was what the blog is running in. And I think there's like 20 people that have ever installed that.
So it's not a Drupal 7 thing?
No. And at first I thought I was going to upgrade it, but I really don't know if I plan to at this point.
What about Theta and Epsilon? Just kidding.
I haven't reserved those namespaces yet, but it's coming up.
Hey, Jake, maybe you're gonna address this at some point,
Sure.
but there's a lot of talk about Fusion and Skinner and that.
All right.
So at some point, are you gonna like talk about the differences in the approaches? Or
Okay.
just want to make sure at some point you address that?
I'm a big fan of Fusion, and I use the quotes very heavily. I'm kind of really trying to compete with them and take what they've done to the next level. Actually, some of the stuff that's in Fusion was taken from Omega. And Omega actually, I mean, I can't take credit for but just a piece of it. Maybe now that it's getting further along, maybe half of it, but most of the code that powers what this does was taken from 5, 6 different themes throughout the community that each had a good piece. Zen had something good, Fusion had this one piece I liked. You know, there were a list of others that I was able to take from, put them all together into what I felt, for me personally, was just everything I wanted in one clean, ready to go install, so that no matter what I was doing, I could quickly get to theming the site. But I could definitely touch on some of that, and maybe if you use Fusion, you'll see just through what's coming up in this presentation is mainly wireframe screenshots of what the interface will be. My demo has actually the backend interface where you see what all can be configured right now. So I think you'll probably even just be able to see what the differences are. So, the new version. In order to accomplish this drag and drop interface, in order to accomplish all these things, there needed to be something else put in to the Drupal templates. And so Omega has taken on zones. We're already familiar with regions, and regions are where your blocks go. You can, let me start with this. Zones are exclusive in the Omega theme, and the simplest definition is they are containers for regions. So another layer outside of your regions. In 960 grid, the zone would be just considered as the container div. In the grid, that container gets a container dash, and then 12, 16, 24, whatever the number of grids for that container is. Inside of that container or zone are all of your divs that then have the grid class, which gives them the specific widths and places them appropriately. Those are the two main classes, the grid the grid and container that really define your layout with the 960 grid system. And that's as simple as it is. It's just placing those in the appropriate locations. The way this has been set up, zones are defined in the .info. And hopefully everybody can see this. I have, in this first one, just being a sample, content zone. And we see zones, content, this is the machine name of the zone. And then these are the regions that are going to be placed in that zone. And yes, there is a zone and a region that's content that may be confusing and at some point get renamed. But with,
Jake, so I understand this. So basically a container is a block with, as a chunk that runs all the way across, right?
Yep.
So like, for instance, your footer is a chunk, there's no overlap. So all your grading is happening within the container, and the container is basically just dividing the screen up into horizontal sections?
correct.
Okay.
So, creating these zones and trying to do this in a dynamic way, zones had to be broken into 3 groups to go into your page TPL. Zones above, zones of content, and zones below content. Sure. The content zone is obviously required if you're not going to have a website. So your main content region, your sidebars, and you can still put many more things in this particular content region, but that one is required. But what all of this is bringing to light is the ability to generate page TPL in a very simple way. In Drupal 7, they actually introduced a new template that was HTML.tpl.php.